Hi, I'm Steve Barg. I'm the city administrator in the city of Marshfield. I'm here with Mayor Bob McManus. And welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, this feels a little different. Normally, this is a news conference that involves the local media, but as it's turning out right now, it's the two of us. So we just want to kind of get you caught up on what happened at the council meeting last night on November 12th. Bob, one of the big items that came up was discussion of whether or not we would allow smoking in city parks. We have a current ban on smoking in public facilities, but there's been a desire to look at maybe extending that to our parks. And what happened in that discussion?
Well, it was a great discussion. We actually had a skit before,
Yeah.
which I thought was very effective by some folks that were not fans of it. And interesting statistic that came out of that is that 86% of the people in Wisconsin do not smoke. So there's only 14%. However, the issue comes up with, which many of the council members did have an issue with, is, government overreach. Do we ban smoking in, this one specifically was for parks. And so there was a good spirited debate on it, both for and against. I think one of the biggest issues is how do you enforce this? Because our police department is already spread thin enough, and do we want them going to parks checking on this? And the other side had an argument that, well, just having the policy there is going to deter it. Much like people when they walk their dogs, making sure they pick up the waste and things like that. So it was a good discussion. It didn't end up going anywhere because one of the things that is relevant is the fact that there are already signs there that in many of the parks that say don't smoke, but there's just no ordinance and no fine. So it's just there for people to self-police, I guess you will. But it's a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, I think one of the things people might take away wrongly from this is that City Hall isn't concerned with public health. We are concerned with public health. The tougher issue, I think, for the council to deal with last night was this thought that, okay, in a building, that secondhand smoke is more of an obvious health impact. You're out in the open air in a city park, walking around on Greasy Park or whatever, the tie is a little bit less direct. And I think that's one of the things that they maybe wrestled with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
And just for the record, it actually, this is an interesting thing. The votes were 5-4 in favor of the ordinance, but we have a slightly higher bar for ordinances as opposed to regular motions. It requires 6 affirmative votes, and Mr. Hendler was not there. And so even though it was 5-4, the city clerk informed us that didn't actually pass. So another item that got a lot of discussion was the prohibition of firearms or weapons in the building that we're sitting in right now. Been hotly discussed a couple times at different meetings. And the issue is that the city is allowed, if they want to post the building and then not allow firearms. It's something that we're not required to do. So it's really entirely up to the council. And there's discussion, we've had pro and con now about safety. There's one school of thought that says, boy, if we have somebody come in with ill will, it'd be nice to have someone here who could protect himself or herself. The other school of thought is that, people might think weapons inherently make a building less safe. What happened in that discussion last night?
Well, it was really divided, literally right down the middle. There were some people that were of the opinion that putting more guns into a situation is not necessarily going to help it. And so there were other people that thought, with that sign up there, that could be a deterrent to somebody with malintent that going to go and they're going to look for these, quote unquote, gun-free zones. It makes it easier for them to go pick the ones. The evildoers typically in these situations it's some sort of domestic, or they're going in looking for a high body count is typically what goes after them. So, all the arguments are good. Specifically here, people that carry a concealed carry can't go into a courtroom. There are certain things that they can't go anywhere. So as our great Marshfield Police Department, they did a poll, or they put information out on their, the Marshfield Police Department Facebook page. I think got Rebecca Sparrows, the alder person for District 7. No, 8.
Yep.
Said that there were 175 comments, overwhelmingly in support of taking the sign down. And there were others that just didn't feel that way. And I know that you did a poll of city staff because, and this is one thing that's very important is the voice of city staff who's actually here how do they feel about it? And from my understanding, split right down the middle.
Yep, a slight preference to no weapons in the building, but it was fairly close. It kind of mirrored some of the public debate you hear on cable news. The same types of things that we're discussing here. And one of the interesting things about the meeting last night really was that we kind of took issues that are broader than city issues and discussed them with the council. I mean, you hear discussion of the Second Amendment on TV every day. You hear discussion of smoking and the possible safety impacts on cable news and the broader news. So issues that are talked about more openly by people just over kitchen tables in general became issues that suddenly were right in there with sidewalks and streets and the kind of things that we normally wrestle with in this building.
Absolutely. And you know, what I thought was great about this conversation was it remained civil.
Yeah.
And you see so many times when people get into this type of discussion, it can get pretty ugly pretty quick. And there were people that were very, very against it and very for it. You know, of course, I asked the question there, I asked the police chief, how many people that have carried a concealed carry, have the concealed carry permit, have any ever committed these types of mass shootings? And there are none that we know of that are on record. However, a big issue is how many times did somebody with a concealed carry weapon get in and intervene and it was helpful? And there were some where that was the case. I believe he said 8 to 10. And of the 8 to 10, I believe half of them used the firearm, the other half didn't.
Correct.
So I thought that was very interesting. You know, one thing that was great, and I hope you'll take the time to go to the City of Marshfield website, and you also see this replayed on Channel 991, Marshfield Media Access Channel 991, and watch the discussion that took place. Specifically in this conversation, what I was amazed at is we had two guests there. We didn't know that they were going to be there. Two young gentlemen, teenagers. I believe they go to the high school, and they were there on a project for the Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy got up just on the spur of the moment. He was so articulate. And I don't believe that they knew even what we were going to talk about.
I don't think so.
As he was listening to and engaged in the conversation at City Hall, he wanted to do input, and he did, and it was brilliant input, so much so that our city attorney was the one that responded. And that's the kind of city input that we really enjoy. So I hope you'll take the time to go to Charter Cable, Marshfield Media Access, Channel 991. You'll be able to see this replayed, or you could go to the city website and you can review all of these conversations.
Yeah, I think I saw a future leader in my mind when he was up at the podium.
Absolutely.
And that was pretty impressive. And just one more thing to note, we greatly respect Todd Ziegelmeyer. He's the one who brought this forward, the concern. And one of the issues that came up was safety, you know, when we come to City Hall for these meetings. Just to note that either the police chief, Rick Gramza, or maybe his assistant chief, Pat Zepps, somebody like that is at council meetings. And, you know, that if that's something that it helps you to realize that there is security for those events, that's a good thing as well.
Absolutely, and you know, there are people that are out there, and in Marshfield we do feel safe, and we do have a great police department. We go over and above, I believe, on as well we should to keep citizens safe. But you always hear when one of these atrocities happens that we never thought it could happen in our town, which is why we have to have this conversations. You know, when I was a kid 100 years ago, I lived in California. We had earthquake drills, and when the drill went off, you got under the desk and then you were safe. Sadly, today throughout the United States, we have gun attack drills, and these are conversations that we have to have. But again, they were civil, and what we are concerned with mostly is citizen safety. And so it was a good discussion.
Excellent. A couple other things from the council meeting. Dan Kinect gave a report on the library and community center project, just to kind of tie together the financials to show that we stayed within budget. And this is something that I think Rebecca Spiros had brought up before, saying, you know, how do we know when we authorize these projects as council? It might be the library, it might be the renovation of this building, it might be the Wenzel Family Plaza, which I think will be on our next report. How do we know that we actually stayed within budget if the public says to us, well, your government, I see what happens in Madison, I see what happens in Washington, D.C. But he kind of tied it out and showed that we did stay where the budget amount was met, and that the revenues and expenses all tied out the way that the council had brought it up. And hopefully that's of some significance.
This was the second one he did. He did one a few months ago, and boy, I'll tell you what, Dan Connect is a sharp guy.
Oh my gosh.
We have a lot of great employees here in the city, and if those kinds of presentations are not just the definition of transparency and accountability, I don't know what is. It shows that we stayed. I think on a $9 million budget, it was over by $9,000, which is minimal.
Yeah.
When you do that type of project, I thought it was great, and I thought his presentation was good. The numbers were very clear. They were concise. It was just all around a great job.
Well, and it's so helpful as we're about to go into the pool project, because people are probably thinking, well, we're talking about a pool where we put in $3 million and the private sector puts in $3 million. How do we know that we're going to stay within $6 million? Do I wake up one day and find out that we spent $8 million and it was a bad deal? This gives you some thought of the fact that people are minding those project numbers.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful. The one other thing I'd like to cover came out of closed session, and very rarely do we get to report on what happens in closed session, but sometimes we do. In this case, we were reviewing some contracts with the city and the clinic health system for these transport services. And maybe we could touch on a little bit how that works. We've done it before on a couple one-year trial basis. This will be a 2-year agreement. Talk a little bit as to how this will benefit the city of Marshfield.
Well, I'm very excited about this. It's one thing that I've known that we've needed since the election. We've had some issues there, but we're supposed to have on average 11 firefighters, paramedics that are on staff, and many times because of people are off or vacancies, we've really only had 9, and so we really have this need there. But of course, you have to stay within your financial means. Well, one of the things that we have done has been going on for a couple years now.
Yep.
Is the transports that we've been doing for the clinic, and they transport all over the state, and those create their own set of income, if you will. So this isn't something that is necessarily going to cost citizens more money. That these folks will be hired out of the profits, really, of these transfers and other medical transfers. So the issue with these contracts, though, is we were hoping for more of a long-term, maybe a 3 to 4 year contract. We settled it too, and we understand Marshfield Clinic Health Systems, our largest employer. We very much value the relationship there. They're going through transition in talks of a merge with Gunderson. And so, of course, they don't want to be tied to a 4 to 5 year deal while all these things are going on. So I believe all the parties came in there, and so since that was done, I believe now we have the green light, which was agreed on last night. These agreements were first approved and duly approved by the Police and Fire Commission. They were in negotiations, and we're very thankful to the work of the Police and Fire Commission. And they approved them, and then it came for ultimate approval to the council. And it was unanimous, I believe.
Yep.
We realize that we do have to have more staff there, but the good news for the citizens is this higher staff is not going to be more costly from the tax base. It'll actually be from the revenue of these calls. So it's a win-win situation, and this is a breath of fresh air for the staff in the fire department, because one more person per shift is going to take a little bit more of the load.
You use the phrase win-win, and I think sometimes people think that might be overused, but truly, this was a win-win. This is an opportunity for the city to gain more revenue, hire needed firefighter paramedics, and for the clinic to fill the gap that was left when Spirit, moved on a couple of years ago, to get these people transported to Madison and other facilities where they need treatment. So all in all, I think win-win really does apply here. So good news, and good to be able to report that. So 2-year contracts are being signed as we speak, and the process of hiring the 3 new firefighter paramedics is underway, and we look forward to getting them on board. Bob, thank you. Good.
That was fun.
Good. Yeah, it was good to
We
review.
did a little different.
It was. It felt kind of good. Good to review the meeting. That's the meeting of Tuesday, November 12th, and those were some of the highlights. So thank you for watching, and the next council meeting will be on Tuesday, November 26th. That will, as part of it, be the public hearing for the 2020 budget and tax levy. If you have any questions on that, give us a call also. You can reach us either by phone, email, any way you can get us. We'd love to try and address your concerns. So for Mayor Bob McManus, this is Steve Barg, City Administrator, saying thank you for watching.